This conference will now be recorded.
So I hope everyone got a chance to watch yesterday's video. The last video one more time to clarify the concept of containerization. So today, I will talk a bit technical about how they work. Somebody is unmute. Ramesh, can you mute yourself?
Okay.
Ravi, I think, just send me a reminder by the end of the class. I will fix that. Actually, I enabled your access, but I noticed that you have registered 2 times. So I don't know for which login I enabled the access.
Okay.
I'm starting the machine. So today we will talk about how exactly a container work or what is a container, right? So I will tell you this, containers are always created from a Docker image. If you have a Docker image, from that image, we can create a container. So whatever is there inside the Docker image, all the software would be there inside the container, right? Let's say you have a song here, the song would be here. You have a software installed here, the same software will be here, right? So it runs inside a container. So I told you, if you have a software, if your company have a software, you can put the software and all requirements of the software in a Docker image. And then when you create a Docker container, the container will have everything that it ever need, right? The software will start running without any problem. But let me ask you this question. Yesterday, what we did is we created a MySQL container from the MySQL image, right? So definitely this MySQL image have MySQL installed in it, MySQL installation in it. And when you create the container, you will have MySQL running inside this container. Then what we did is we created a database, a user, and a password. Similarly, in case of WordPress also, we have the WordPress container. It has Apache WordPress files in the www HTML folder. Then it has a PHP module for Apache, MySQL module for PHP. Then index.html file is deleted from there, right? All these things, it's there. Then when you created a container, what happens is Apache start running inside the container, and also we modify the wp-config.php file with the correct credentials of the database. So that is not something the image have. The wp-config.php file of the image, definitely it does not have the database credentials. When you pass the environmental variable, at that time it will take those values, database name, username, and password, and then it will update the container wp-config.php file. The image wp-config.php file don't have your database credentials, right? So in that sense, container and image are different, isn't it? Right? So inside the image, wp-config has a different content. Inside container, wp-config has a different content. So in this case also, there is a difference between the image and container. The MySQL image, it didn't have a database in it, but the container that you created have a database in it because you passed the environmental variable, you specified the name of the database to be created, username and password, then automatically all those credentials got created inside the container. So This is called configuring your containers using environmental variable. So technically, what is going on in the background is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, let me talk about a simple Docker image. And let me tell you what happens when you create a container. So you run the command docker run to create a container from an image. What happens is a command will get executed inside this container. What command? Some default command that you specified within the image, maybe start Apache, or maybe a different command called create a new database. Like that, there may be some command which is set as a default command inside the image. So every time a new container get created, what happens is the container gets created and that default command will run inside the container. So whoever is creating this image, they use this technique to configure the container. For example, you have a Docker image which has Apache in it. Now you want to create a container and you want to start Apache in the container. What you do is inside the image, you will set some command start Apache, Apache start, or service Apache to start, whatever. What that means is, I am just mentioning that every time a new container gets created from this image, that container will run this command. For example, service Apache to start. Then Apache gets started inside the container. So that is how you would start, or you would run a program in the container at the time of container creation. Okay, so assume it is a MySQL image that you currently have, and from the MySQL image you want to create a MySQL container, and at the same time you want to make sure that it has a database, a user, and a password. What you can do is, assume there is a command that you have already set here, and what this particular command does is it will create a database, it will create a user and password, it will start MySQL. So these many things the command will do automatically. Create a database, then create a user, create a password, and start MySQL process. And these many things the command or the program will do. And assume this is the default program. Every time someone create a container from this image, this program will run inside the container. So assume you use the docker run command using the MySQL image. Docker run MySQL, what happens is it will create a container, and in the container it will execute this program. What this program does is it creates a database, a user, password, and then it would what else would it do? It would sorry uh, it would start MySQL, right? Whatever program does, it will be running inside the container. Same case of WordPress also. Whoever developed the WordPress image, specified some kind of command in here. What this particular command does is, anyone in the world, anytime they create a container, it will modify the wp config.php file and insert the correct database configuration. Then Apache will get started. Assume that is what the program does. So at the time of container creation, some program get executed, the default program. that the image creator had put inside the image, that will run inside the container, and then that program will configure the container from the scratch, make the container ready. All right. And this program can access the environmental variable that you passed, right? Every time you create a container, you can pass some variable, right? For example, the db name, db underscore name equal to WPDB. So this is a variable that we passed, right? And this variable, the program can read. So for example, it want to modify WP config.php file. It want to know the correct database name. It will take the database name from this variable. So if you passed WPDB, automatically, that variable will be taken, and then it will modify WP config.php file accordingly. So these are the methodologies that image, whoever developed the image, they will follow in order to configure the container. At the time of creating the container, some program will run inside the container, and that program will configure your container, right? Whatever changes that need to be made at the runtime, it is the program that will do those changes. Okay, great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to SSH. I'm going to SSH to the machine. Right? The machine already have Docker installed in it, the same machine which I have been using yesterday. And this machine has two Docker images which are currently downloaded on it. And every time I create a container from this Docker image, that something happens inside the container. Some program will run inside the container, right? Okay, great. So that is the way how a Docker container works. Every time you start a container using the docker run command, docker run vectors. I mean, this is the command, right? To create a new container, docker run space image name. And then whatever default command is there inside this image, that command will get executed in the new container that is being created. And if you want, you can override that. For example, yes, there is a default command that is specified within this WordPress image, and every time somebody create a container, that program will execute in the container. I know that, but I don't want to do that. I want to pass my own. Let's say I want to execute the ls command instead of those default program, or I want to execute some cat command, or I want to execute some command myself, right? I want to execute some command myself, and I do not want that default program to be executed. In that case, yes, it is possible. You can override with your command. Let's say I want the command ls to be executed instead of the default program. By default, whatever the default program is, that will run. But if you pass any command, then that command will run instead of default program. So right now what I am doing is, from the image, I'm creating a container, and inside the container, it will execute a command ls, not that default program that that image has. It will override. If you pass some command, then that command will be taken instead of the default program. So the container will start, and then the ls command will run inside the container, right? That is what going to happen. So let us take a look. I'm running this command, and let us see what happens. So I run the ls command, and you can see ls command got executed inside the container. What happened is it created a new container from the image vectors, and then inside this container ls command got executed, and what you see in the output is the output of ls command. wp content is a folder that has come here, when you executed the ls command. That's great. ls command executed inside the container, and now let us see if the container is running right now. What is the command to see the list of running containers? It's docker ps, right? Docker ps command will show you all those containers which are currently running, and it says currently there are no containers running. So what happened to the container that you created?
-d is missing.
Yeah, -d is also not important here actually. So the container got stopped automatically, and there is a reason why it got stopped this time, right? Yesterday after we ran the docker run command, every time we run docker ps we can see the list of containers, but when I use the ls command, then container did not stay. Container got stopped. Actually container got created, that you already know, right? Docker ps -a command, if you run it you can actually see the container that you created, but the container had stopped. It got exited. So I will tell you why it got exited very quickly. A very, very important thing. Every time you create a container from a docker image, there will be a default program that the container will run. Either the default program put inside the image, or the command that you pass at the time of creating the docker container. So along with the docker run command, I passed ls command this time, and whatever command that run as the startup program in the container, it will decide the life cycle of the container. Or in other words, the container will stay as long as the command is running. If the command gets finished, container will get stopped. Okay, that is the life cycle of a container. The container will not stay once the command has completed execution. Okay, I'll just talk about it. I need 5 minutes, guys. Sorry. We will continue in 5 minutes. Take a short break. I will tell you what happened in detail.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So I told you, every time you create a container from an image, if the command don't stay, the container won't stay. Container gets stopped immediately as soon as the command got finished. So that is what happened in our case. We created a container, and the command what we passed is the ls command. And how much time does ls command take to run? Less than 1 second, right? It will quickly run and then it will exit. So ls command got created and it got exited very soon. And as soon as the command got finished, the container gets stopped. So that is the way how Docker is designed. The container will stay as long as the command or the program will stay. So instead of the ls command, assume you are not passing the ls command, and it is the default program that is running on the container. That's what happened yesterday. Yesterday when we created WordPress container, we didn't pass any command ourselves. The default program got executed in the container. So at that time, the container was running, right, without getting stopped. Container ran without getting stopped yesterday. That's what happened. So what could be the reason? The reason is this program is keeps running. It never gets stopped. So every time you start a container, and if you want the container to stay, you should choose a command that will stay. The command should not get killed or command should not get completed. Command should run in the foreground in order to, if you want your container to run for a long time, the command should never stop. So that is very, very important. Every time you create your own Docker image or Docker container, you should make sure that you specify a program. Either you can specify the program at the time of image development. We will see how to develop our own images, or we can specify the program at the time of creating the container. Whatever this program is, the program should never stop, right, if you want your container to stay. So let us talk about how do you develop your own Docker image. That is my next plan. I'm going to develop my own Docker image. And this Docker image which I am going to develop, it's a WordPress image, right? You know WordPress, so you can easily understand what I am explaining if we take the example of WordPress. So far, what we did is we got the WordPress image from hub.docker.com, but this time I am going to develop my own Docker image. Okay, that is the plan. I'm going to develop my own Docker image. And this image will do something like this. The image would contain Apache installation, PHP installation, the MySQL module installation. Then, what else? The WordPress files in the war.ww HTML folder. What else would be there in this image? The image will also contain some program that will run at the time of container creation, right? The startup program. I told you every image will have a default startup program. Every time the container get created, it will execute this program in the container, and the command must stay. Command should not exit. Then only the container will stay. Okay, great. So what I'm going to explain here is when you create a WordPress container, you have the wp-config.php file to be modified, right? You want to configure the container, or in other words, you want to edit the wp-config.php file, and in there you should insert the correct database credentials. And also you must start Apache inside the container. So these many things you should do inside the container at the time of starting the container. One is editing the wp-config.php file with correct database information, which you can pass as environmental variable, right? The database information can be passed, database name, username, password, etc. can be passed as variable. Then your program, when it run in the container, it will take those values, then it will add those values in the wp-config.php file, then it will also start Apache, right? These many things needs to be done for WordPress container to run properly. All right, so all the things would happen at the time of container creation. So that's what this program will do. Modify wp-config.php, start Apache, and then the command should stay. The command should not get terminated also. That is another thing that you want to make sure. So Let us develop such an image with such a program that will modify all these modifications and that will start Apache, and most importantly, that will stay without being terminated. All right, so first I will develop that program. Before I am starting the image development, the first thing what I want to do is I want to develop such a program. The program will take some environmental variable, then that will be replaced in the wp-config.php. That's what my program will do. So first of all, let me develop that program, and later I will develop the image and put the program in that image. So first of all, I will create a folder, WordPress image or something like that. Let me go into that folder, and first I want to download. First I will create my program. So before I create my program, let me download WordPress. Yeah, I'm extracting the files. So I have extracted the WordPress folder and deleting this zip file. Okay, cool. So what I did is I downloaded the WordPress files from the WordPress website. So my plan is, later when I develop the WordPress image, I will copy these files into the www.html folder. So you already know what are the content of this particular, this particular folder. There would be a wp config sample.php, and what you do is you rename this file to wp config.php, and then you will edit the file and you will put the correct database credentials. So I want to do it. I want to edit this file. I want to put the correct database credentials inside the file, right? But when do I have to do? At the time of container creation, not right now. I want to do it at the time of container creation. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to prepare a program. What this program does is it will rename this wp config sample.php to wp config.php. Then it will add database name, username, and password into this particular file. And then the program will start Apache. So these many things I want my program to do. So let me, I'm writing a shell script. You can name it whatever you want to give. So I'm going to name it entrypoint.sh. This is how you write a bash script or a shell script, or in other words, it's also called the Linux script. The first thing what I want to do is I want to rename the file wp config sample.php to wp config.php, and where exactly this file will be located? It will be located in the document root of Apache, right? So let's mention the complete path. So first thing that I want to do would be rename the file to wp-config.php, because this is the file name that you need. Remember, I'm talking about when this script will run. When I am planning to run this program, this shell script, at the time of container creation. I have not created the WordPress image yet. Image I draw in circle, container I draw in square, right? To avoid confusion, that's why I'm doing this. Images I always draw in the circles, container I draw in square. All right, what my point is, assume I am developing this image myself, the WordPress image I am developing myself. I will put Apache, then all the software inside this image. I will do it myself, and then I will create a program inside the image, and at the time of starting the container, the same program will run inside the container. And when that is the program that I am writing, the first thing that the program does is it will rename the wp config.php sample to wp config.php. It will create this file, and then the next thing what the program does is it will take those environmental variable that you passed, and the same database name, username, password would be inserted inside this particular file. Or in other words, it will modify this file and put the correct database credentials, how the program will get the database credentials. When you run the docker run command, you will pass those things as variables. So from that variable, my program will get the correct database credentials to use. But remember, we haven't developed this image yet. That I will do later. I mean, once I develop this image, when I use the docker run command by passing environmental variable, what my program will do in the container. That's what I am trying to explain here. First, it will create the wp-config.php file. The next thing, wp-config.php file will have some default content, right? Let me show you a sample wp-config sample.php file. Yeah, so let's take a look at the wp-config sample.php file, to see how it looks like. So this is the original file, how it looks like. My plan is I want this thing, database name here, this value to be replaced with the actual database name, whatever you pass as environmental variable. Similarly, username, password, hostname, everything need to be replaced with the actual value that you would pass as environmental variable. So that is what my program must do. Every time a new container got created, my program has to configure the container. My program has to create the wp-config.php file. Then inside the file, it want to replace this value with the actual database name, actual username, actual password, actual host name. So that is what I'm writing inside the program, the steps to modify this file and replace this value with the actual value. So there's a Linux command called sed. Sed is a Linux command using which you can replace some keyword, in our case database name here, with another keyword, let's say db name /g, to indicate that it's a global change, and then you mention which file you want to modify. So I will explain what the set command will do. Set command will take this file, then replace this existing value with this variable name. Okay, that's what the set command will do. This is the syntax. And once I executed this command, now if you go to the wp-config.php file, you will not see this thing here. Instead, you will see the actual database name. What is the actual database name? Something that you got as an environmental variable called db name. Right? Every time you create a new container, you will pass an environmental variable. The variable which I chose to use is db name. db name is a variable that I am going to pass at the time of docker run command. db name equal to, let's say, wpdb or whatever. And then I'm telling my script, when the script will run inside my program, this is the script which I am writing, right? And I'm telling the second line of the script is reads that take this value, whatever value it is, I may be passing something called wpdb or whatever that value is. Take that value for replacing this string inside this file. That's what set command do. It will replace one string with another string inside a given file. It's what this set command will do. So automatically this program will take this value and put it there in the wp config.php. That's what I wanted, right? And similarly, I will do the same thing for username, password, and right, everything. Username will be replaced with, let's say, you can decide what variable name that you want to use later at the docker run command. You should pass the same variables, right? Then it will take that and it will replace that. Then similarly, database password.
I think you're missing the parameter as the
What parameter? Yeah, slash, right? Right? I want localhost to be replaced. So I want everything to be replaced. So these 5 commands, they will run one by one. And finally, at the time of setting up the container would have the correct credentials in the wp config.php file. Or in other words, now my WordPress container know how to connect to database correctly, because at the time of creating the container, you passed all these environmental variable. What are the environmental variable you must pass? DB name, DB user, DB password, and DB host. What is DB host? The IP address of the MySQL container. MySQL. I'm taking the same MySQL container that we created yesterday. I'm not making any change here. So the container will have an IP. Same IP I need to give it as a environmental variable, so that WordPress container would keep the same IP. It will connect to that IP whenever it want to connect to database. So that's what my script will do. Whenever my WordPress container get created, this script will run inside the container, and then line by line, the first line says create this wp config.php file from sample php. Second line says put the db name inside here, put the username, put the password, put the database host name. So basically, once the script got executed, or once the first 5 lines got executed, then wp config.php file will have the correct database credentials. Great. So I prepared the wp config.php file, and what is the other thing that I want to do inside the WordPress container? After wp config.php file become ready, then I need to do another thing, right? What is that? At the time of container creation, I should prepare wp config.php file. These 5 lines will do. What is the next thing I want to do at the time of container creation?
the command should be running in the background.
Yeah, I should make sure that my program don't exit. My program should always, not in the background, it should run in the foreground.
Yeah.
So my program should not complete. The program should stay. Then only the container should exist. Yeah. Then only the container should also stay. And what else you need to do inside? I mean, anything else that you want to do for WordPress to work? WP config is mandatory. That is, assume it's done. What is the other thing that you want to do? You must make sure that Apache is running and listening on port 80, right? Apache must be started inside the container. Then only anyone connect on the container can get the WordPress page from it. So Apache must be running. I should start Apache. So 2 things I need to take care. Apache must be running, The second thing, the program should be running too in the foreground. I mean, the command should not finish. Command should stay. The program should stay. So basically, what I want to do is, I want one command that will start Apache, and also the command will stay. Two things, two objectives under one command. I want to run a command, and this command will start Apache, and also this command will stay in the foreground, so that this entire program will stay. Then the container will stay, right? If this program ever got completed, the container will also get stopped. That I don't want to happen. So I'm going to use this command. You know what is the command to start Apache? Service Apache to start. So will this command work? This command will start Apache, I know, but will this command stay or get started in the foreground?
Can you use a no-op?
Actually, no. Yeah, correct. So this is a command that would start Apache in the background, and then the command will exit. So on a normal Linux machine, right, when we installed Apache, remember this was the command we used for starting Apache. That is the ideal option. Every time you run the command, if Apache is not running, Apache gets started in the background, and Apache will keep running. And this command will terminate immediately, right? It hardly takes 1 second to start Apache. Once Apache got started, this command will finish. If the command finish, there is no problem if you are on a Linux machine. But if you are on a container, if the command finish, your container gets stopped, and you don't want that to happen. So this is not the right command to use in a container environment, because container will run as long as the command run. This is a short-lived command. It will complete within 1 second. So as soon as the command completed, container gets stopped. So don't use this command to start Apache. Unfortunately, there is another command to start Apache. This is another command to start Apache, and this is a command that will run in the foreground. Sorry, this is the command. Apache CTL -d foreground. This is the command that would start Apache in the foreground. And the good thing about this command is the command won't terminate. Command will stay in the foreground after starting Apache. The command will never get terminated. Or in other words, if you create a container with this startup program, the container will never get killed, never get stopped. Container will stay. So this is the command I would use to start Apache. Great. Let me save this file. So I just created a program, I just pre-created the program. I have not created the Docker image yet. That's what I'm going to do. So at the time of Docker image creation, I want this program to be put inside the Docker image. Not only this program, I want to put this program in the Docker image. I want Apache to be installed in the Docker image, PHP to be installed, MySQL module to be installed. Then www.html should contain the WordPress files, right? I already downloaded the WordPress file. Then this I will copy to www.html of the image. So these many things I have to do in order to develop a proper WordPress image. So once I developed a proper WordPress image, I can create a container from that image which I created, and I should configure the image in such a way that this become the default program. So every time anyone in the world, I can create this image and share this image with anyone. Anyone in the world try to create a WordPress container from this image, always this program will run inside the container unless you override it, right? Last time we have seen, at the time of docker run command, I told you, you can override this command with your own command, let's say ls command. But by default nobody does that. It will run the default program, and you know what this program will do, it will modify wp configure php file, it will start apache. So all the things happens at once, or your container become ready and configured. Make sense? So let us start. So in order to develop a Docker image, you don't have to do anything manually. What you can really do is you can, what are the steps to be done, right? How you would develop this image. This image should contain Apache, it should contain PHP, it should contain the MySQL module, it should contain the WordPress files, then the default index.html file to be deleted. Then this program, entry.point.sh program to be copied, and that program should be set as the default program. So these many things you have to do to create your own WordPress image, and that's what we are going to do. So I will tell you what are the procedure, manual procedure, if you have to do it manually, but you don't have to do it manually. Let me explain the procedure of creating your own image. So if you want to develop your own image, first you will take a base image from hub.docker.com. Maybe hub.docker.com has a Ubuntu image, Ubuntu 18.4 image, hub.docker.com have. So what I will do is I will just take that image, Ubuntu 18.4 image from hub.docker.com. Then on top of that image, I will do my customizations. First thing, I will install Apache, PHP, MySQL modules, etc. So I will take Ubuntu image. On top of it, I will install Apache, PHP, MySQL, etc. Then the final image would have, Apache, PHP, and MySQL. Then on top of that image, I want to delete the index.html file. So I will delete the index.html file from this image. So the final image have Apache, PHP, MySQL module, and it doesn't have the index.html. Then I want to copy the WordPress files into the www.html folder. So in the next step would be take this image which has Apache, MySQL, PHP modules, etc. It has index.html file deleted. Now I will copy my WordPress files into the www.html folder, and my final image has WordPress files. Then the next thing what I want to do is I want to copy my entry.point.sh script. Entry.point.sh, the script that I have created, right, for setting as the default program. So then next thing what I will do is I'll take this image, then I will, which already have Apache, PHP, MySQL module. It doesn't have index.html. It has WordPress files in the www.html folder, and to that image I will now copy my script entry.point.sh program, which I just created. And then what else do I want to do? Again, one more thing I want to do. I want this entry.point.sh to be the default program. I will take this image, create a new image. This new image already have Apache, PHP, MySQL, etc. Doesn't have index.html. It has WordPress file in the www.html folder. Then it has the entry.point.sh program, and then this program is set as the default program. So this is my final image. Through these steps, which don't has to be manual step, I can automate them. I will create my final Docker image, and this final Docker image is ready to create containers by passing the environmental variables. The default program entry point.sh will run in the container. It will modify the wp-config.php file from whatever variable you passed. It will start Apache, and this command will stay. Then the container will stay. Anyone who connect on port 80 can see the WordPress page of this container. I can share this image with my friend who can create a container on his laptop. He will also have the same process running. His laptop would run WordPress. I can share the same image with my server team, and they can create a container inside your server, AWS server, that will also run WordPress. So I standardize this image, and anyone in the world create a container, it will run this program, and the container get configured from scratch. So all I need to do is tell them to pass this environmental variable. What are the environmental variables? DB name, DB user, DB password, and DB host. So I can share this image with anyone in the world and tell them, when you create a container, this variable you must pass. Then anyone in the world can create a container from image that I will develop. So let me develop this image. Okay, let me now develop this image. In order to develop an image, you can use Dockerfile. You can create a file called a text file called Dockerfile, and inside this file you can specify the steps one by one. Dockerfile is a simple, it's not a complex program or anything. It's a very simple text file where you will write down the steps one by one. You would mention, I want to start from the Ubuntu image from hub.docker.com. Then on top of that, I want to execute this command apt-get update and apt-get install Apache to PHP, libapache to mod PHP, then the MySQL module. I want to install Apache. Then, on top of it, I want to run this command rm index.html file to delete the index.html file. Then you can mention, the next thing I want to do is, I want to copy the WordPress folder from my Docker host into the container. Then after copying the WordPress folder, you can write the next step, copy the entry point.sh program from my laptop, from my AWS machine to the image. Then the next thing, make entry point.sh as the default program to be executed in the container. Right? All these steps I can just write down in one single file, and then I can just run the docker build command. Then it will execute this file one by one. All the statement it will execute one by one, and finally I will get a Docker image. So that's what I'm doing. So anyone in the world, any developer, right? Your developer working in your company have your own software, so they can develop Docker images of your software, right? Think about a company, a retail company who has a payment Paytm software, Google Pay software, like that. There are different softwares that a company have. Then what can you do? If a company have different softwares, what you can really do is you can create a Docker image for each of those softwares. One Docker image for shopping cart, Docker image for Prime customer, Docker image for Google Pay. And every time you want to run shopping cart software, just create a container. Any software that you want to run, you would just create a container. So the company don't have to bother about building the software, compiling it, executing it, talking to the operation team who will set up the server and install the software, install the install everything that the software need. Instead of that, a company who developed Docker images for every software, anytime they want to run a software, they will just run a container. That's easy. So just like how we are developing our Docker image, any company, any developers in the world can develop their own Docker image for their own software. WordPress, now I am assuming it's our own software, right? Assume you have your own PHP web application. WordPress is just an example. We are taking that example. So we are developing it ourselves, right? We are developing it ourselves. Just like how we are doing, others can also do it. Anyone in the world can do it. And that's what people do today. They develop Docker images and use them. So let us start. I'm going to edit the Docker file on a Nano editor. And let us take a look at the Dockerfile syntax. You can search in Google for Dockerfile. Take a look at the syntax. These are different parameters that you can use inside a Docker file. Add, copy, env, export. You can just simply read it. I'm not going to explain them one by one. If you want to set some environmental variable, this is what you can do. abc equal to hello, a equal to 10, right? abc equal to hello is the variable, this is the value. This way you can set one or multiple environmental variable you can do. Or from this is what set a basic image. I told you every Docker image should start from a basic image. So let's say in my case I want to start from Ubuntu image. There is an Ubuntu image in hub.docker.com, Ubuntu 18.4. So if from command would set the base image, then run command, using run command you can execute any Linux command to modify the image. For example, you want to run the command apt-get update and apt-get install Apache 2. We can use the statement run space apt-get update and apt-get install, whatever. So run will allow you to execute a Linux command in order to modify the Docker image. And come down, there is cmd. I told you you should set your default command, right? We prepared the entry point.sh. Yes, we should copy the entry point.sh program to our Docker image, and then we should make that as our default program. To create a default program, you can use cmd. Label, if you want to specify some information in the Docker file, who created this, under which company this Docker file belong to, right? All those things you can, write as a label. It's like a variable like this. And it's read-only variable. We don't use it. Even maintainer also you can mention who is the maintainer of this Docker file, mail ID of the person you can give. Again, we don't use it. This is also read-only variable. Which port does the container listen on? In our case, it listen on 80. So we can mention expose 80, but it's a read-only variable. Adding this variable don't make any change to your Docker image. It is only for information purpose. Then you can add environmental variable. Let's say you want to define a variable inside the Docker image. You can do that using this statement env, then the variable name space the value. Then automatically the image would be set with these variables, whatever variables that you specify. Add, you want to add one file from your Docker host to the container, to the image. You can use the add statement. Then copy, you can copy, let's say I want to copy the WordPress folder from the Docker host into the image. I can use the copy statement. or entry point.sh program I want to copy inside the Docker image, I can use the copy statement. So if you want to copy something from the Docker host to the image, you can use the copy statement. Like that, there are, entry point.sh is also kind of setting the default program like CMD. So like that, there are different options available. You can just go through them. And so I'm using these different options in my Docker file. As I told you, what from will do, from would specify a default command from Ubuntu 18.4. What does that mean is, I want to take this image Ubuntu 18.4 from hub.docker.com, and I want to start from this image. So I am setting a base image. So if you go to hub.docker.com, there is a Ubuntu official image. If you search inside hub.docker.com, search for Ubuntu, there is an Ubuntu official image, right? Open the image. There are different tags. Ubuntu latest is there. Ubuntu 18.4 is there. Ubuntu 20.4 is there. Different versions are there. I'm going to use Ubuntu 18.4. That is where I want to begin. Then once I have this, I am going to set an environmental variable actually. I'll tell you why I did this. Right? Let me make sure that it's correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, I will tell you. So when you run the apt-get install command, sometime when you try to install a software in Ubuntu using apt-get install, it will ask you for some information. Okay, it will actually ask you for some information. For example, it will ask you what is your time zone, or what is this, or what is that. Different kind of questions you can expect to hear. So obviously, when you are developing a Docker image, you don't want any kind of interaction coming. Right? You don't really appreciate any kind of interaction that is coming from the apt-get command. So what you will do is, you will tell in advance that do not ask me any question, just proceed the installation. And that's what this variable will do on Debian based operating systems. If you have this variable set to non-interactive, then none of the apt-get commands will ask you for any kind of interaction. So that is the importance of this variable. So I'm setting this variable because I don't want any interruption or interaction happening from the apt-get command. I'm going to run apt-get command to install Apache or PHP or whatever. At that time, I don't want any interruption. So I set this environmental variable. And how do you set environmental variable using Dockerfile? Using this statement called env. Okay, the next thing, I want to install Apache. How do you install Apache? You can use apt-get to install Apache. Using the run statement, you can specify a Linux command to be executed. So in my case, I want to execute the command apt-get update and apt-get install. What are the software that I want to install? You already know. What are the three software? It's Apache should be installed, libapache to mod php should be installed, php mysql. So yes, you can write a single apt-get install command to install all the software. That's fine. Apt-get install command, you can install one or multiple software. If you are installing multiple software, just mention them separated by space. Great. Or you can use multiple run statement, run apt-get update, install Apache, then another run statement to install php, another run statement to install php mysql. But it's not necessary in doing it under one step. What is the next thing I want to do? I want to delete a file. Whenever you install Apache, a default file will come. called index.html. I want that file to be deleted, right? Then only the WordPress file will show up. What is the next thing I want to do? I want to copy the WordPress folder from my local to www.html, which is on the Docker image. So that's copy is a statement that you can use to copy a local folder. WordPress is a local folder, right? I downloaded WordPress files into my Docker host and I extracted it. I want that extracted WordPress folder to be copied into the www.html of the Docker image. That's what this statement will do. Not only WordPress, I want to copy entry.sh also into the Docker image. So at this location of the Docker image, I want to copy the entry.sh program. So both the WordPress folder and the entry.sh is located in my local. Local means on the AWS server. So I want those files to be copied into the Docker image. WordPress will be copied into www.html, entry.sh will be copied to /entry.sh location. Great. And inside the image, I copied the script entry.sh. But currently the script is not in a executable stage. It doesn't have permission to get executed. So in Linux, you can run this command cmod 755, then the script name. Basically what this command does is it will script become executable. This program become executable by default. The program don't have permission to run. Chmod command will get it permission. And anything else is missing? Anything else that we wanted to do? I want to make this program the default program so that anyone in the world create a container from my Docker image. This program will run automatically inside that container. So using the CMD statement, you can make a program, default program. Okay, great. So when I execute this, I created the Docker file with instructions to create my WordPress image. I'm writing the steps that first it install Apache PHP MySQL modules, it delete index.html file, it copy the WordPress folder into www.html, it copy the entry.sh into /entry.sh location. It will make this /entry.sh executable in the Docker image. Then I am setting that as the default command. These many things I want to do to properly develop my Docker image. These are the steps to develop my own Docker image for WordPress. Okay, I'm going to save this file. Yeah, somebody asked some question.
Basil, we have listed a few steps in entry.point.sh in the shell script. So rather than having entry.point.sh, can't we list those steps within this file?
Then it won't be dynamic, right? So yes, can we modify the wp-config.php file with the correct database credentials from here? You can do. You can execute the entry.sh here, or what you can easily do is you can go to the WordPress folder, then do it manually. Create the wp-config.php file, put the correct database credentials. So what will happen in that case? Let's say what I can simply do is, without creating all this entry.sh script, maybe the simple thing what I can do is I already downloaded the WordPress folder. I can, it already have all these files. I can just rename the file to the proper name wp-config.php. Then I can edit the file, put the database credentials manually, and then, so Docker image itself would contain the correct database credentials. But what is the problem if I do that?
Every time we use this, we need to set the database.
Exactly. So you cannot modify them. Right? You cannot modify them if you hard code them inside the Docker image. So the configurations, we will never hard code them inside the Docker image. Then it would become impossible to modify a Docker image. So Docker image get modified, or the container get modified, or container get configured only at the time of container creation through some script like entry-point.sh. The script will take the database credentials from the environmental variable, modify the wp-config.php file for you. Do not make the wp-config.php file configuration changes in the Docker image. If you do that, then you cannot modify that. So that is the reason I chose to create a entry-point.sh, and at the time of container creation, let us dynamically configure the container, or let us dynamically configure the wp-config.php file. Then only this image become usable by my friend. I want to share the Docker image with my friend, and in his laptop he has a different database.
So one question. So if you want to edit any configuration in the container, can we do it straight away in the container?
Come again?
If you want, once the container is created, can you do the config changes within the container, not just creating the new one?
We won't do it manually. We will have our entry-point.sh do it for us. We will pass the environmental variable, and that's all. It will be changed accordingly. We won't do it manually. We won't log in and do it. It will happen automatically, whatever env that we pass.
Okay.
Yeah, Basil, after you creating the image file, I already used this image file. If I want to do any add new packages or any changes, can I do that for the image file?
You can keep developing new images. You can modify the Docker file, add new steps, delete existing steps, right? You can keep modifying this Docker file, and then change the entries, again create a new image. So every time you want to make some change in the Docker image, what you will do is you will modify Docker file and again build a new image. That's the procedure.
Instead of developing new one, can I add any changes to this image file, existing image file?
Correct, and you have to build it. I haven't built the Docker image yet. That's what I'm going to do. Yes, so whenever you want to make change in the Docker image, edit this file, build a new Docker image.
Yeah. One more thing, and if we add any package, we have to restart the Apache, right? Each time.
Every time the container get created, Apache gets started. So always remember, when you are developing an image, you are not running your software. You are simply developing your image. Software will run only when you create the container. Later we will do that. Currently, when you develop an image, don't worry about the services or anything. And every time you start a container, at that time Apache gets started. So no need to restart Apache or do anything when you are developing the image. All right, so let me create the image now. So I am on the same folder. I have the WordPress folder, entry-point.sh. As you know, both the WordPress folder and entry-point.sh, we have to copy to the Docker image. We already have written steps in the Docker file to do that. Using the copy statement, it will copy this folder and also this file into the Docker image. So now we have all the steps wrought in the Docker file. Let me create my image. The command is docker build -t. Then you would mention the name of the WordPress image that you want to develop. Let's say you can mention some version 1.0.0, or you can simply mention latest, whatever. Then you just put a dot. Dot indicate that current folder is your context. Dot means current folder. The current folder contains the Docker file, entry point.sh, and the WordPress folders. So execute the image building from my current folder. So this is the command to build my Docker image. Okay, there is one problem. Before running that command, whenever you run the apt-get install command, it will ask you for the confirmation, right? Do you want to continue? Yes or no? You have to give yes, then only apt-get command will do the installation. So I don't want that question. So I use -y. -y, it won't ask you for confirmation. It will take it as a yes. Otherwise, it will stuck up, right? So now I'm going to build the Docker image. This is the command you will always run to create the Docker image. This command will take the Docker file from the current folder, then execute every lines one by one, and it will finally create your own image and name it my WordPress latest. So let's run the command and see. So first it is taking the Ubuntu 18.4 from hub.docker.com. It is downloaded. It is setting the variable. It is installing Apache and PHP MySQL, whatever. Once that is done, it will delete index.html file. It will copy WordPress file. It will copy, right? All the steps is happening one by one. Okay, Apache is installed, it seems. Yeah, and now it is copying the deleting the index.html file, copying the WordPress folder, copying the entry point.sh, right? And then it is setting entry point.sh as the default program, and finally it is tagging it like this. So the image got created. Your image is ready. You created your own WordPress image. Okay, so you have created your own Docker image. Now you run the command docker images. You can see along with the other Docker images, WordPress is an image that we downloaded yesterday. WordPress latest, MySQL 5.7, Ubuntu 18.4 is also there, and this is the new image that you have created, my WordPress latest. Great. So from that image, I'm going to create a container. Okay, from this my own Docker image, I'm going to create a WordPress container. Let me do that. So first of all, I should create a MySQL container, right? My WordPress want to connect to MySQL. So first of all, let me create a MySQL container. Yeah, this was the command I ran yesterday in the last class to create a MySQL container, right? You can specify whatever database user and password. So no changes. I'm simply running this command. You already know what this command will do. It will create a MySQL container. Same thing what we did in the last class, right? We have a MySQL official image, MySQL 5.7. From that image, I'm creating this container, MySQL container. It will have an IP. How you will find out the IP? By running the inspect command. Then inside the container, I want database to be created, username and password to be created, right? So those I pass as environmental variable, database name, username, password. Then it will get an IP address that we will find out by running the inspect command. And once you have all this information, we will create our database WordPress container. We can use the docker inspect command to find out. Okay, first of all, run the docker ps command. We can see the MySQL container running. Docker inspect command to find the IP address of your database container. This is the IP address of your database container 172.17.0.2. So when I create my WordPress container, I have to give this IP address. So let's take a look. Now I am going to create my WordPress container. Docker run command, right? Docker run. Then you would mention the name of your image. It is my WordPress, and you would mention -d option and also -p option to export to the outside world. Then you would mention different environmental variables, right? What are they? What are the environmental variables? Whatever we mentioned in the entry point.sh, right? So these are the environmental variable which my entry point.sh program will take. DB name, DB user, DB password, and DB host. What is the DB host? You have to mention the IP address of your database, the one that you got from the inspect command. Then DB name equal to WPDB. Then DB user equal to WP user. Then DB password equal to DevOps 12345. Right, so basically, I already created my database container. Now to the WordPress, I am simply giving the credentials how to connect to database, right? And the same credentials, what will happen when I create my WordPress container from this command. I'm just trying to, from this WordPress image. Now I am trying to create a WordPress container, and I am passing the environmental variables. What are the environmental variable? DB host, DB name, DB user, and DB password. And I know that every time from my image any container get created, it will execute which program? Entry point.sh program. And what entry point.sh program will do? It will take the environmental variable. What are they? DB host, DB name, DB user, and DB password. Then first it will modify wp config sample php to wp config.php. Then it will modify this wp config.php file with the correct credentials, database name, username, host, etc. Then it will start Apache, and Apache will start in the foreground, and Apache will never get stopped. The program will never get stopped. Container will never get stopped. So let us do this. Now what happened is your container got created, the WordPress container got created, and I am assuming it successfully is connecting to the database because wp config.php will have the correct credentials of the database. It must be connecting to database correctly. Let us verify. Let us try to browse for the public IP of the AWS machine. Oh, I think it is not showing me anything. Now let me. Did we make any mistake? WordPress is copied into www.
The port
Yeah.
number you are.
No. Basically, we haven't copied the WordPress folder correctly. There was a typo.
Right.
I mentioned www instead of www. So that is why the www folder didn't have WordPress files. So that's why it is not showing me any WordPress file here. There was a typo in my entry point docker file. I corrected that. So if you made any change, you should build the Docker image once again. Okay, I'm building the Docker image once again using the same command. I'm building the Docker image once again. It will be fast, right? It won't take much time as before. It will be faster. So Docker ps command, I have an existing container running. I'm deleting this container and I am creating a new container. Okay, I'm deleting the existing container and then I am creating a new container using the same command. Okay, so I'm creating a new container using the same command. Okay, container is started. And now let me browse and yes, it is taking me to the WordPress page. There was no database error. All looking good. It's working. I can see WordPress. So this time, what you did is MySQL we didn't develop. We used the same official Docker image. We developed our own WordPress image. Okay, that's what we did today. We developed our own Docker image. That's how you do it. That's how you develop your own Docker images. That's what companies do. Yeah, Vienna, you can use a greater than symbol, then specify the file name. It will write into that file. When you run the Docker build command, you can put at the end, you can actually put a greater than symbol, and then you can mention some file name. Then automatically, whatever logs are there, it will be written into this particular file. And if we add any package, we need to restart Apache. Then yeah, Akash, I think I already answered the question. Yeah, sorry, today I took a little while extra. Sorry for that. But we are done with the prerequisites, right? Tomorrow we will start with our advanced training.
Hi Basil, Veena speaking. Actually, I have a doubt. Can we allocate memory or CPUs for a container?
It can be done. We will talk about all that when we learn Kubernetes.
Okay.
It is possible to
Okay.
do lots of things. So anyone, any questions?
Hello, Basil.
Yes, Amar.
How to create duplicate console in the putty?
Right click and select the option duplicate session. Right click on the top of it.
While doing that, we are getting some error. Yesterday we did it, but I'm unable to create duplicate session.
I don't know what is the error. That's how you do it in putty to create a duplicate session. On the top of the putty, you just right click and select the option duplicate session. So I don't know what is the error you got.
Some like network issue and unable to key generate is something it's getting there.
Try again, and if you still get the same error, you just send me a screenshot.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, guys, so let's continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we will start with our advanced training. We start with the CI/CD. Yeah, and actually one of my other batch will also join us, for the project and for the advanced training. There will be a few more people join us. Okay, cool. Yes, thank you everyone. See you tomorrow, same time.
All right. Thank you. You have a good day.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you, Basil. Have a good day.